Over the last decade, the pace at which the Chinese Navy has grown has been remarkable by any standard. It is a matter of deep concern for many in India and indeed in several parts of the world. The Chinese are now outbuilding the US Navy, which for decades has been by far and away the strongest navy in the world. And the security implications for India in the Indian Ocean region are very, very serious indeed. The Indian Navy at many levels has been an area of absolute strength. It's been a technological hub as far as India is concerned, and our weapon systems in the Navy are concerned. But the increasing presence of the Chinese in our waters is something which needs to be addressed. It's something which Rear Admiral Raja Menon, one of India's finest submariners and a former Assistant Chief of Naval Staff, has written a great deal about. He joins us now. Thanks very much, Admiral Menon, for being with us. Why is it important at this juncture of our history to aggressively position the Indian Navy against the Chinese in the Indian Ocean region?
I have, for the last half a century, witnessed the continuing aggression of China against India, culminating in the episode in Galwan in June 2020. And I said to myself that enough is enough. And we have to think of a punitive strategy against China, which cannot be executed in the Himalayan border. And that is because on the Himalayan border, geography is very much against India. The geography for China is so favorable that they have managed to construct a 6-lane highway from the Arunachal Tri-Junction all the way through Tibet, across Aksai Chin into Xinjiang. And as a result, they are able to move altitude acclimatized troops laterally as quickly as is possible to overwhelm us at the point of aggression by the Chinese. As a result of this, they have actually reduced the strength of the PLA to 300,000 less than that of the Indian Army. Now, the Indian Army, which is the finest institution in the country, is doing its best to hold the border, and it is successfully holding the border. But the army is not capable of a punitive action. For punitive action, we have to choose an area where the geography is against China and favors us.
Right.
And
that's where the maritime domain is so very important. Admiral Menon, you've also spoken about the failure of India's maritime strategy is a direct consequence of severe underfunding. That's no longer an option, right?
Yeah, this is, for a maritime nation like India, a defense share of the defense budget of 15% is tragic, is really tragic. But even so, even if this is corrected, it is not going to be done overnight.
Right.
So we have to find an offensive option in the Indian Ocean with the current Navy, which is possible.
Right.
And
so let's talk a little bit about that. How should India, in taking up a more offensive posture in the Indian Ocean region, use our geography to our advantage, not just our peninsular landmass, but also our island chains?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Vishnu, because you look at the maritime geography of China, it is very poor indeed. It's a continental nation, and it faces eastwards into the Pacific Ocean, which only enables the United States Navy to arrive at China's doorstep. Its main economic assets, which is 65% of its oil and 70% of its commodity trade, is in the Indian Ocean.
Right.
And from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, it is deeply constrained geographically by having to come through the Malacca Straits.
Right.
And it is theoretically possible
Yes.
for us to dominate the battle space in the exits to the Malacca Straits in such a way that the message will go clearly to Beijing that any adventure in the Himalayas will be countered with very serious consequences in the Straits of Malacca.
Yeah. Now, sir, you've written about the importance of the Indian Air Force playing an expeditionary role, not just the role of the Navy in the Indian Ocean region, but the role of the Indian Air Force as well is critical in maintaining maritime dominance.
Yeah, that is right. Because people ask, do you really want to take on China with a GDP 5 times larger, with a defense budget which is 4 times larger, and a navy that is 3 times larger? And my answer is yes, we want to take on China by leveraging the revolution in military affairs. Now, what is the revolution in military affairs? It is to gain information dominance over a carefully chosen battle space and dominate that battle space in such a way that we are in a position to deliver our ordnance much before the Chinese.
Right.
And I have chosen this battle space near the Malacca Straits and called it the Eastern Battle Space. So we dominate that using the Air Force from Car Nicobar, which already has an airstrip. And I have spoken to my architecture friends who have told me that for something like 50 or 60 officers and 400 men to upgrade Car Nicobar to a 5-star air base shouldn't cost more than 2,000 to 3,000 crores.
We also have Great Nicobar, Campbell Bay, which is INS Bars, which is a facility which is really being built up. The runway has been extended as well. So that's another facility which we can leverage. That's
right. And from the Nicobars, we can exert information dominance in such a way that the Malacca Straits is totally dominated by our assets. As you know, India, the United States and Australia are part of the Quad.
Yes.
And their normal peacetime activity includes maritime air search. And we already have an information intelligence sharing agreement whereby the American Navy in the South China Sea can give us 2 to 3 days warning of the arrival of a PLAN warship into the Indian Ocean. So we have complete dominance over the exit to the Malacca Straits, which gives us the ability to execute a velocity of delivery of ordnance which can overcome the Chinese.
Right. Admiral, you've also spoken about how India is seen as a country with just an immense army and no regional clout. And therefore, it's important to walk the talk. It's not enough to just say that we can do this. We need to start doing it. And I suppose one of the main ways in which we can start doing that is getting serious about A, ordering more warships, and B, increasing the speed at which we build them.
That is indeed true, because what the Navy can achieve is to influence the choices being made in Beijing. Certainly, even though we are asymmetric as far as China is concerned, I am not suggesting that we actually go into a shooting war. But we must demonstrate a capability whereby Beijing is deterred from going on an adventurous course. And for that, I have also suggested that, for instance, the Foreign Office should be included to try and get an agreement on the island of Masira off the Gulf coast of Oman, so that from there an expeditionary Air Force component can exert superiority over the Straits of Hormuz.
Right.
And thereby expand the regional power capability of India through dominance of the Indian Ocean.
Right. Now, Admiral, a large part of the game is being played underwater. The Chinese have greatly expanded their nuclear submarine fleet, whether it's fleet ballistic missile submarines or fleet nuclear powered attack submarines. That gives them the versatility and the ability to operate underwater and undetected for relatively long periods of time. How is it important for India to focus on our strategic arm? In other words, not just ballistic missile submarines, but also nuclear attack submarines, to be able to counter China at great distances in the Indian Ocean region?
It would be ideal to have a fleet of attack submarines, nuclear-powered attack submarines. But as I said, this is still in the future. And the difficulty about having an effective nuclear-powered attack submarine is the strength of uranium in the core, the core of the reactor. And a real attack submarine must have an enrichment number of 90 to 95%,
right,
so that it can transit from the South China Sea to the Indian Ocean 2 or 3 times a year, right, without taking a deep breath. But in the role that we are envisaging for the Indian Navy, conventional submarines with missile firing capability is adequate.
Right.
Because what we are really going to do is induce the Chinese into a killing ground in the exit to the Malacca Straits, where they will be met by the entire force of the Eastern Fleet and the Indian submarine force. In that case, we can manage without nuclear-powered attack submarines.
Sure. Admiral, one final question to you. Would you agree that one of the biggest advantages that India has is the fact that we design our warships to our own designs? They fulfill an Indian requirement. These are no longer imported designs. And therefore, our operational requirements are met by engineers building warships in India.
This is a huge advantage. I know that we've been building ships ever since we commissioned the INS Nilgiri in 1968. But this is something that the country can really be proud of. To have an offensive capability to dominate the Indian Ocean, depending on platforms built entirely in India, as a result of which we can operate these platforms for almost half a century, which is not something that other navies can do with their platforms.
Right. And Admiral, again, as I said, last question, I must ask you one more. Aircraft carriers. It's prohibitively expensive. The Chinese are building them. We have 2, one presently, then the new Vikrant is out on trials. The Navy has always said we need 3rd, but we are outgunned with our aircraft carriers considering the size of carriers that the Chinese are building. Now, is this necessarily the way that India needs to progress, aircraft carriers, considering the costs? Is there any option at all?
Yes, it very much is. Although I have spent half my life in submarines,
right,
I must say that there is a pressing need for a 3rd aircraft carrier. And the reason for this is very simple. Today, according to the revolution in military affairs, you must first establish air dominance over the Indian Ocean. And that air dominance, you can fight a battle under air domination. And that air domination can come only from aircraft carriers. And the vast expanses of the Indian Ocean can be met only partly by an expeditionary air force capability, but in the deep reaches of the central Indian Ocean, we will need aircraft carriers.
Right.
And for that, because the aircraft carrier, they say, is hugely expensive. But I must say that, for instance, the Queen Elizabeth class of aircraft carrier, which is 60,000 tons and bigger than the Vikrant, came out at something like 32,000 crores, which over a 10-year building time is not very much. Just 3,000 crores a year.